Those questions. We now come to questions to the Prime Minister. Mike Martin.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the progress in talks between Ukraine and the United States. We must now redouble our efforts to get a lasting, secure peace. And, Mr. Speaker, on Saturday, I'll convene international leaders to discuss how we can make further progress. Can I also pay tribute to the bravery and dedication of all those responding to the ship collision off the East Yorkshire coast? Our thoughts, and I'm sure of the whole House, are with the family of the crew member who is sadly presumed dead. Mr. Speaker, this week we introduced landmark legislation to get Britain building, paving the way to restoring the dream of home ownership for working people across the country. We're also driving forward our Employment Rights Bill, the biggest boost to workers' rights in a generation. That's our plan for change in action. This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Mike Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Russia has abducted at least 19,000 Ukrainian children and transferred them to Russia. They have been told that their parents don't love them, they've been placed in Russian homes, and they have been re-educated. For this despicable crime and others, the International Criminal Court has issued 6 arrest warrants for Vladimir Putin and his gang. I note the Prime Minister's previous fulsome support for the ICC, and I also note his comments just last night about the support that the UK will offer to Ukraine in achieving a just and lasting peace. Will the Prime Minister confirm to the House that British peacekeeping troops will only be deployed to Ukraine if the peacekeeping deal includes both the return of Ukraine's children and Putin's prosecution?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Speaker, firstly I thank him for raising this issue because it is an absolutely terrible case of abduction and kidnapping. And when we say a lasting, just settlement or peace in Ukraine, it must, of course, involve dealing with this issue, and we are, as he would expect, raising it continually with our allies.
On Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Telford and Britain voted for change in July. Yet this week we saw the bizarre spectacle of the Conservatives attempting to bring back the Rwanda policy, clinging onto a gimmick that cost the British taxpayers £700 million, yet only sent 4 volunteers to Rwanda. As Labour works to secure our borders through our plan for change, does the Prime Minister agree with me? It's quite clear the party opposite have done absolutely nothing.
Well, he's quite right. They ran an open borders experiment that saw numbers go up to almost 1 million. And the leader of the opposition was the cheerleader, thanking herself for the lobbying that she did. The Rwanda scheme, yes, Mr. Speaker, £700 million of taxpayers' money to remove 4 volunteers. What a contrast. We've got the flights off, 19,000 people removed who shouldn't be here. As with the NHS, with prisons, the economy, everything else, we're clearing up the mess that they lost.
Leader of the opposition, Kemi, Badenoch.
Later today, the Prime Minister is meeting the family of Sir David Amess. Sir David gave this House and our country 40 years of service. I hope the Prime Minister will agree that getting the response to his murder right is vital, not just to his family, but to our democracy. Mr. Speaker, every week I speak to businesses who are letting go of staff or closing. Has the Prime Minister been given an estimate of how many people will lose their jobs because of his budget?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, just on the question of Sir David, he was a deeply loved and respected colleague, and behind me is the plaque, as is the plaque to Joe Cox in front of me. And I know this was deeply felt by the House, but particularly, as I acknowledged at the time, by the party opposite, who lost a colleague and a friend in the most awful of circumstances. Mr. Speaker, I am meeting the Amess family later on today, and will make sure that they get answers to the questions that they ask. Mr. Speaker, in relation to businesses, I'm really pleased to say we've got thousands of new jobs into the economy. We've got more investment in the last 20 years an absolute record. Wages are up higher than prices. 3 interest rate cuts, the best boost for the cost of living for a very long time.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister needs to get out more. Inflation is up, and estimates of job losses are between 130,000 and 300,000. Okay. His tax rises are hurting every sector of the economy. Things are getting worse for nurseries. Nurseries are writing to stressed parents right now, telling them that fees will go up because of his jobs tax. Can he explain how more expensive childcare is good for the economy or for working families struggling to make ends meet?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're putting in childcare. Look at the breakfast clubs, 2 in her constituency. But she's rather forgetting the £22 billion black hole that they left, that we had to deal with. That's why we had to take the necessary but right measures we did in the budget. And what's her response? Not that she'd reverse them. Oh, no, she doesn't say that. She attacks what we've done, but she doesn't say she would reverse it because she wants all the benefits of our budget in returns of investment, but she doesn't want to pay for it. That's how we got into the mess in the first place.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is out of touch because he should know that nurseries are charging over £2,000 for full-time care. That's £24,000 a year after tax, and he's talking about 60p breakfast clubs. He has no idea what people out there are experiencing, and it is not just the families. Even councils must pay his jobs tax. To cope with it, the average council tax bill is increasing by over £100 in April, after he promised to freeze it. Hard-working families' money is going to the Chancellor instead of social care and fixing potholes. Why should these families pay more for less?
Well, she really shouldn't denigrate what she calls, I think, 60p breakfast clubs. She should be welcoming them. And she asked about council tax, Mr. Speaker. The Tories put up council tax every year for 12 years. Their manifesto, Tory LGA manifesto, government should remove the caps on council tax. And then Hampshire Council, Tory, wanted a 15% increase. We said no. Slough Council, again, Mr. Speaker, Tory, wanted 3%. We said no. Windsor and Maidenhead, Tory, now Lib Dem, wanted 25%. We said no. We're the ones that are doing the right things to get this country on the right track.
Mr. Speaker, the point is he promised to freeze, and they are going up. And if he wants to talk about councils, let's look at Liverpool or maybe Birmingham, where the rubbish is piling up so high, people vote Labour and all they get is trash, just like what he's saying at the dispatch box. People all over the country are suffering, not just in Birmingham. Millions of elderly people have had their winter fuel payments snatched away. At the same time, care home fees are set to go up by a devastating £3,000 because of his jobs tax. How does he expect pensioners on a fixed income to make ends meet?
Mr. Speaker, this is why it's so important that wages are up higher than prices. That's why it's so important that the interest rates are coming down. This is the biggest boost for the cost of living for a very, very long time. What we're doing is picking up and fixing the mess that they left.
Kemi, Badenoch.
Go. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is not looking at what is happening out there. Every day I speak to businesses who are telling us that they think that they are going bust. And as if businesses and families didn't have enough to worry about, supermarkets say food prices will increase by over 4% because of the jobs tax. And that's before we get to the immoral family farms tax on the very farmers who work so hard to produce our food. What does the Prime Minister have against farmers anyway? Does he not see that his budget is killing farming in this country, and he is making life so much harder for everyone else?
Mr. Speaker, the budget provided £5 billion for farming over the next 2 years. That is a record amount. We've set out the roadmap for farming, which has been welcomed by farmers. And many thousands of farms have benefited from the farming schemes. But she talks about prices. Wages are going up higher than prices. That's the first in a long time that's happened. So for families across the country, they're better off under Labour.
He's got no answers today. What the farmers are complaining about is the sustainable farming incentive, which he has just scrapped or withdrawn. They are making mistakes with this budget. And that's why in 2 weeks, the Chancellor will come to this House to present an emergency budget the Prime Minister said we would not need. They will try and make out it's because of global events, but the truth is they trash the economy with their bad choices. They said they'd look after pensioners. Then they snatched winter fuel payments. They said that they would be pro-business, but they hiked taxes on jobs. And he, Mr. Speaker, he promised to freeze council tax, but it's going up by £100. This is a high-tax, low-growth, job-killing government. Will he use the emergency budget to fix the mess he's made?
Mr. Speaker, inflation under them 11%, £22 billion black hole, a mini budget that made us the laughing stock of the world, and they want to give lectures on the economy to us. No, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With 1 in 8 young people across the country not in education, employment or training, people in Rugby are worried about a wasted generation. Too many people with disabilities and health conditions are not getting the help that they need to get into work. So will the Prime Minister set out how this government will give everyone who is able to work the support they need, provide compassion to those who can't work, and fix the broken welfare system left behind by, you guessed it, the Conservatives?
I thank him for raising this issue. Mr. Speaker, I come from a family that dealt with disability through my mother and brother over many years, so I do understand the concerns that have been raised by him. But we inherited a system which is broken, it is indefensible economically and morally, and we must and we will reform it. We will have clear principles, Mr. Speaker. We will protect those who need protecting. We will also support those who can work back to work. But Labour is the party of work. We are also the party of equality and fairness.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to begin by giving a shout-out for Young Carers Action Day today, but I promise the House I will not sing. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has rightly spoken about the need to get more people into work, and he repeated that now, so people have more dignity, we can get the economy going, and we can cut the benefits bill after the disgraceful legacy left by the Conservatives.
You were there for 5 years.
But does the Prime Minister recognise that for many disabled people, the best way to help them into work is to support them properly, with more special equipment, with training, with better healthcare, and so on? And will he also today calm anxieties that he himself has raised for many of us, that the disability benefits for people who simply cannot work will not be cut?
Mr. Speaker, we will, of course, as I've just said, the principles, we will, of course, support those who need support, but also help those who can work into work. They'll be the guiding principles. But what we've inherited is shocking, and they ought to be silent. 1 in 8 young people not in education, work or training. That is a lost generation. That is their inheritance. They've got plenty to say now. They did nothing for 14 years and left this in terrible inheritance.
And Davies.
Mr. Speaker, turning to international issues, can I congratulate the Prime Minister on helping to secure the restoration of US military and intelligence support for Ukraine? But can I press him on progress to persuade President Trump against damaging metal tariffs already hitting British industry? The Prime Minister knows that we on these benches believe he must be more robust with President Trump, like the Europeans and like the Canadians. So will the Prime Minister fly out to Canada as soon as possible to show their new Prime Minister and the Canadian people that Britain stands with its Commonwealth allies against Trump's threats and against Trump's tariffs?
Well, Canada is an ally and a very important ally too, and I've spoken to our allies on many occasions about the situation in Canada. On the question of tariffs, obviously, like everybody else, I'm disappointed to see global tariffs in relation to steel and aluminium. But we will take a pragmatic approach. We are, as he knows, negotiating an economic deal which covers and will include tariffs if we succeed, but we will keep all options on the table.
Claire Hannah.
Hi, Elefadra Conadív agus Shaun na Gaeilge Fosta Deis Con Changa agus our culture Kellaroo or Fodandone. Happy St Patrick's Day, everybody, and happy Irish Language Week as well. An opportunity to use Irish language and culture across the world. It's an increasingly turbulent world, Prime Minister, with relationships and norms turned upside down over recent weeks, and that's why I congratulate the Prime Minister and the Taoiseach for re-establishing warm and firm relationships at their summit last week, and it's reassuring for all of us to know that whatever our constitutional future, that bond is lasting and refreshed. Will the Prime Minister join me in wishing a happy St Patrick's Day to all who value our shared bonds, and can I take this opportunity to invite him to Belfast in August 2027, which was announced this week as the host of the Fleadh na HÉireann for the first time.
Well, can I join her in wishing everybody celebrating a very happy St Patrick's Day? Mr Speaker, she's right. We need a strong and settled relationship between the United Kingdom and Ireland, and the need for that has never been greater, which is why I was delighted to host the Taoiseach in Liverpool last week at our first annual UK-Ireland summit. We've turned the page, started a new era for our relationship with Ireland, and I'd be very happy to go to Belfast in 2027. I want to go much sooner than that.
Andrew Stone.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. In just 20 days' time, new sentencing guidance will come into effect that the Justice Secretary has already conceded will be two-tier in its nature. It will mean that the colour of your skin or the religion you have can give you leniency in the eyes of the law and will plunge public confidence in the judiciary into crisis. But it is avoidable. We Conservatives have tabled a bill that, if backed on Friday, can stop this guidance in its tracks. So will the Prime Minister, will he now overrule his Justice Secretary and confirm here and now that he will back this bill, or will he simply step aside and prove he has in fact been two-tier Keir all along?
Well, everyone should be equal before the law. That is why the Lord Chancellor has taken up the issue with the Sentencing Council. But he needs to do his homework, because the proposal that he complains about was drafted in 2024, and the last government was consulted. And when they were consulted, what did they say? They said they welcomed the proposal. Now, Mr Speaker, I understand that the Shadow Justice Secretary is taking the Sentencing Council to court. Perhaps he should add himself as the second defendant so we can get to the bottom of the ball.
Thank you. Mr Speaker, I'm very proud to represent a constituency that has 8 synagogues, a thriving Jewish population, and the UK's largest Jewish cultural centre, JW3. But this week, I was horrified to read reports about rising anti-Semitism on NHS wards, and in particular, a shocking incident in which a Jewish NHS staff member was called a baby killer by their colleague. The NHS that I know and love is open to everyone, regardless of their background. So could I ask the Prime Minister, what is he doing to ensure that my Jewish constituents can safely use our beloved National Health Service?
Well, I thank her for raising these deeply concerning reports. It is completely unacceptable for anyone to experience racism, discrimination or prejudice in the health service. I know my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, takes such reports extremely seriously. It is a fundamental principle that the NHS provides care and treatment for everyone, regardless of race, faith or background. This is a really serious issue. you've let yourself down, you know it. I expect all trusts and healthcare providers to take necessary action against any staff who've expressed views that do not reflect the views and values of the NHS.
Dave Dugan, a closed question.
Question 9, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker, he asked about UK-US relations. As he knows, and the House knows, I'm committed to strengthening those relations. The US is an indispensable ally. We are working together to try to secure a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. And I've spoken to the President on a number of occasions, including this week.
Dave Dugan.
I agree with the Prime Minister in those sentiments. The ceasefire negotiations this week are a cause for great optimism, and I welcome the efforts that the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, had done in leading that priority. But last week at the dispatch box, the Prime Minister said in answer to my right honourable friend, the member for Aberdeen South, that he had no knowledge of the United States planning to withdraw military aid from Ukraine, yet they did that the following day. It's against that backdrop, because I know the Prime Minister wants a just and lasting peace in Ukraine that respects Ukraine's borders and territorial integrity. When he's impressing that priority upon the President of the United States, what reassurance can he give the House today that the President of the United States is actually listening?
Let me give this reassurance. As soon as that step was taken, I and my team started work to try and ensure that we could get back to a situation of full support for Ukraine. I won't detail everything that was involved over the last week. I can assure him and the House a huge amount of hard work, discussions and diplomacy was used with all of our allies and others to ensure that we could get yesterday to go as well as we hoped it would. I am pleased that we made progress. I think that's very important for Ukraine, and I'm extremely pleased that support has been put in, backed by the US, for Ukraine. So that's what I did once I understood what had happened. I'm pleased with where we've got to, but as ever, we must go further.
Richard Bergen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Disabled people in my constituency are frightened. And they're frightened because they're again hearing politicians use the language of tough choices. And they know from bitter experience that when politicians talk about tough choices, it means the easy option of making the poor and vulnerable pay. So instead of cutting benefits for disabled people, wouldn't the moral thing to do, the courageous thing to do, be to make a real tough choice and introduce a wealth tax on the very wealthiest people in our society?
Well, Mr Speaker, the party opposite left a broken welfare system which locks millions out of work. That is indefensible, in my view, economically and morally. Of course we need to support people who need support. We need to help those who want to work to get back into work, and I think there's a moral imperative in that. He talks about a wealth tax. We have raised money, the energy profits levy, taxing non-doms and air passenger duty on private jets. But this isn't a bottomless pit, and we must kick-start growth to get the economic stability that we need.
Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown.
Most people would accept that we need more housing in this country, yet so often it's not accompanied by the necessary infrastructure. In my own constituency, thousands of houses are proposed, yet without the £250 million to upgrade Junction 12 of the M5, the inspector is likely to rule our plan unsound. So will the Prime Minister use his upcoming planning and infrastructure bill to see how developer and landowner contributions can more effectively build this vitally needed infrastructure which would benefit communities up and down the country?
Well, he's right. We have to get the houses built that we need in his constituency and elsewhere, something that the party opposite failed to do. That's why we've introduced the infrastructure bill, which I think he welcomes, and that bill will get Britain building so we can deliver on those 1.5 million new homes through our plan for change. In relation to the particular issue he raises, I know that he and my honourable friend, the member for Stroud, have been working together to try to resolve this issue, as I understand it, and I'm happy to ensure he gets a meeting with the relevant minister if that would help in taking it further.
Sure, Jean Joseph.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. can I commend this Labour government's landmark reforms to get Britain building through our plan for change. I look forward to working with ministers to ensure developers deliver on what they promise to local residents so that new homes also have access to roads, GP surgeries and dentists and don't create an extra burden on hospitals like the William Harvey Hospital in my Ashford constituency. What is the Prime Minister's message to the blockers standing in the way of the homes and vital infrastructure our country needs?
Well, he's a dedicated campaigner for his constituents. Well, we know who's been standing in the way for the past 14 years. It's the party opposite, and they've learned absolutely nothing. The leader of the opposition claims that she's never opposed growth or development. That's not what she's telling her constituents, Mr. Speaker. Only last month she wrote in her newsletter that she'll keep working with Conservative colleagues to block a vital energy infrastructure project in her own backyard. She's not alone. The Shadow Foreign Secretary, Shadow Defence Secretary, Shadow DEFRA, they're all at it. What a bunch of blockers.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Mr. Speaker, the Employment Rights Bill will grant union equality representatives the right to paid time off work.
But it does.
Will the Prime Minister grant special constables the right to take unpaid leave to perform their duties?
I'm grateful to him for raising the question of special constables who play a very important role in our communities and keeping us safe. The numbers of special constables dropped under the last government. We support the existing employer-supported policing scheme and will support our special constables, but they dropped under the last government.
Andy MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Long time.
I recently visited Middlesbrough's James Cook University Hospital and learned of the brilliant work in the neurosciences department for the survivors of stroke, brain and spinal injuries and many others. But it only has 18 rehabilitation beds to serve a population of some 1.4 million people, whereas the guidelines say it needs 80 beds, meaning that patients in the Tees Valley do not get the rehabilitation they need. So will the government remedy the position by ensuring that resources are allocated to meet the ambition to develop a world-class new rehabilitation centre to serve the Tees Valley and beyond?
Well, I thank him for his question. It is important to hear about the important work that James Cook Hospital is doing in his constituency. We are investing £350,000 in research on interventions which support people with functional neurological disorders to rehabilitate them within the community. And of course our plan for change invested £25 billion to cut waiting lists, speed up treatment and shift more care into the community. In relation to the hospital, I'll make sure he gets a meeting with the Minister to see what further can be done.
Sir John Whittington.
Will the Prime Minister look at the case of my constituents, Mr and Mrs Adrian Fenton, who returned home from visiting France in their motorhome to discover an illegal immigrant concealed in the bike rack? They reported it immediately to the police, only to receive a fine from the Border Force of £1,500. Will he agree that my constituents ought to be thanked rather than punished? And does he accept that this action will send a message to deter anybody from acting responsibly in the future?
Can I thank him for raising this important case on behalf of his constituents? I've seen some of the details and I am concerned about it, and I do think it's important, as he says, that the Home Office look into it, and therefore we will do so, and I'll make sure that he is updated in relation to that in due course.
Richard Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Veterans in Sefton, one of the many remarkable charities in my constituency, indicate that statistics can only partly measure the price paid by servicemen and women. Incidents of broken marriages, suicides, alcoholism, deep depression and homelessness among veterans remain largely unquantified. Given that, will my right honourable friend restate Labour's commitment to providing our veterans the holistic support they need and deserve? Well,
we owe an extraordinary debt to our veterans, Mr. Speaker. We are committed to renewing the nation's contract with those who've served, and that includes the guarantees of homes for heroes for those who have served, dedicated mental and physical healthcare pathways in the NHS, and dedicated to sport to help those leaving service using their skills to find new and fulfilling careers.
Sir Dyke.
Yesterday, with no notice, DEFRA closed SFI applications, leaving thousands of farmers who want to deliver public goods waiting for a year without support. So can the Prime Minister assure British farmers that they won't be left stranded and able to support environmental and food resilience goals due to lack of government support?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as she knows, the SFI schemes have operated to provide quite considerable support so far. There have been a number of schemes. They've closed in the past, and then a new scheme has been put in place. They were closed in 2022 and 2023 by the party opposite without the 6 weeks' notice. But we do support farmers. We will be putting forward more details at the spending review. But the difference, Mr. Speaker, in this government is we're funding the farmers. They failed to spend the budget.
Sultana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In October 2023, in an interview with LBC, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "I think Israel does have that right," when asked if cutting off power and water to Gaza was appropriate. For 11 days now, Israel has blocked the entry of vital goods and aid into Gaza, subjecting over 2 million people to collective punishment and starvation. Israel's decision to also cut off electricity to a plant supplying drinking water to 500,000 people is yet another blatant violation of international law and further evidence of genocide against the Palestinian people. In light of these facts, does the Prime Minister still maintain that Israel is not committing genocide?
Look, I'm really appalled by Israel blocking aid when it is needed at greater volume and speed than it's ever been needed. Blocking goods and supplies and power entering Gaza risks breaching international humanitarian law, and it shouldn't be happening. And we are doing everything we can to alleviate that situation.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In his extremely important upcoming discussions with other nations about Ukraine, will the Prime Minister focus on the fact that it was standard Russian procedure to take over other countries by having bogus elections and installing puppet governments? And will he therefore impress on other colleagues to be very wary of calls to hold elections in Ukraine during a wartime situation, which could result in the subversion and takeover by Russia of the entire country?
Thank you for raising a really important point, and the track record is there for all to see. On top of that, of course, we in this country did not hold elections when we were at war. That is a perfectly reasonable and normal course of behaviour. And yes, of course, that has to be part of our discussions as we go forward, including the meeting that I'm convening on Saturday.
Lord Hatton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. South Dorset is ready to play its part, making Britain a clean energy superpower. But after 14 years of Conservative failure, there are many untapped opportunities on our doorstep. Green investment opportunities such as Port Wind, Moor Wind and a hydrogen storage hub are all coming down the track. So can the Prime Minister reassure my constituents that the Government will work with the Crown Court on these projects, invest in key infrastructure and ensure that South Dorset's green energy potential is hardwired into our plan for change?
Well, I thank him. He's absolutely right about making Britain a clean energy superpower. We are committing £2.3 billion to support hydrogen projects, and I recognise the huge potential of South Dorset to become home to a storage hub. We're ensuring public and private investment works together, and that's exactly what the Crown Estate Act does, unlocking significant investment, boosting offshore wind and kick-starting economic growth.
Andrew Rossendale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Leader of the Opposition has already mentioned, later today the Prime Minister will meet the family of our dear late colleague, Sir David Amess, who was so brutally murdered at his constituency surgery 3.5 years ago. I plead with the Prime Minister to reverse the decision to deny the family a public inquiry despite similar inquiries being held into other tragic instances. So, will he please stop this shameful saga and heed the call of the Amos family for a judge-led public inquiry into David's death and the related failure of the Prevent programme from a heartbroken family?
Can I acknowledge just how heartbroken they are? It's difficult to imagine what they've gone through, what they continue to go through. And that's why it's very important that I meet them this afternoon, which I will do, and discuss with them all the questions they want to raise with me. Sir David was a respected and loved a colleague across this House. And as I say, I absolutely understand how his family must feel about the tragic circumstances in which he died and then everything that followed thereafter.
Final question, Chris Keir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow marks 29 years since 16 children and their teacher were murdered at Dunblane Primary School. In recent weeks, my constituents have raised with me the alarming fact that adverts offering handguns for sale are appearing on technology platforms like Google and YouTube. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that technology companies have an obligation to all of us to do everything proactively possible to prevent illegal advertising of this kind and not rely on a reactive, will remove it when it's reported approach, which is simply not good enough?
The thoughts, I'm sure, of the whole House are with the victims of the Dunblane massacres 29 years after the tragic event. The Online Safety Act will require online services to proactively remove such content from their platforms and prevent it appearing there in the first place. These duties fully take effect from Monday, and then we'll make sure that all companies meet their obligations.
That completes Prime Minister's questions.